So just we see piston rings, two types of piston ring, that is compression ring and oil scraper rings. And we saw the function of compression ring to maintain the seal between cylinder wall and piston to prevent the leakage of gas past the piston, transfer heat from the piston head to the cylinder wall. Piston rings also absorb the fluctuation in the side thrust. Then we saw the function of oil scraper ring. It is also called as oil control rings. It provide proper lubrication of the cylinder liner and reduce friction losses. It also make sure that the oil will not enter into the combustion chamber. Then generally the gray cast iron is used for piston ring, and in some cases alloy cast iron is used as a material for piston ring, and it has some good properties. Gray cast iron has excellent wear resistance, as we see that piston is continuously reciprocating and the piston rings continuously rubbing over the cylinder wall, and the material should have good or excellent wear resistance property so that it will elongate its life. It also retains the spring characteristic at high temperature. Generally, the piston rings acts like a spring, and as temperature increases, the spring characteristics may change, and the material should have that ability that even though it at high temperature, the spring characteristic will not change. Sometimes chromium piston rings are chromium plated to reduce the wear. Then the question arises, on the piston, how many piston rings need to be used? So again, it changes from application to application. The number of compression rings in automobile and aircraft engines is usually between 3 to 4. So whenever you open an automobile engine, you will find piston rings between 3 and 4. In stationary diesel engines, it varies between 5 to 7, and just below the compression ring there are oil scraper ring, and it usually lies between 1 to 3. So you will generally see that 4 to 6 compression rings you will generally observe, and 1 to 3 oil scraper rings you will observe on the piston. Then the design of piston ring, that is estimating the dimensions of the piston ring in order to carry the radial pressure and the stresses developed inside it. So basically there are 3 dimensions. First, the diameter of the piston ring. So in this figure you can see the diameter of the piston ring. So it is generally equal to the diameter of the bore, so it is denoted by D. And 2 more dimensions, one is B, that is radial width of the ring, and the height H. So for that, in order to calculate the radial width of the ring, we are going to use this formula. P is equal to D, diameter of the bore, into square root of 3pw divided by sigma T, where Pw is the allowable radial pressure on the cylinder wall. So the radial pressure is responsible for the rubbing action of the piston ring. So the radial pressure is considered while estimating the radial width B. And the permissible tensile stress for the ring material. So for a given material, you can easily find out the permissible tensile stress value. That is ultimate tensile strength upon factor of safety. If it is not given, then the radial wall pressure is usually taken from zero point 0.025 to 0.042 megapascal. The permissible tensile stress for cast iron ring is taken from 85 to 110 megapascal. So whenever there is a numerical and if radial wall pressure and permissible tensile stress is not given, then you can choose the value between the given limit. Then the axial thickness of the piston ring is generally denoted by H. It is also we can say the height, and that is expressed in terms of B. So H is equal to 0.7 times B to B, where H is the axial thickness of the piston ring in mm. So once you get the value of B, you can use this empirical formula to calculate the axial thickness. Again, there is a limit on the maximum axial thickness because the height of the piston is limited, and again we need to use 4 to 6 piston rings. So the value of H should be restricted to the certain value so that it will perform its intended function. And the H minimum is equal to bore diameter divided by 10Z, where Z is number of rings. So these two parameters, that is bore diameter and number of rings, based on these two values we need to decide the minimum value of H, that is axial thickness of the piston ring. Then it is preferred to provide more number of thin piston rings than small number of thick rings. It has following advantage, because see, the thing is that the height of the piston is limited, so we have two options. We can provide thin rings in large number of quantities or thick rings in small number of quantities, but it is better to use thin piston rings because of these advantages. First, thin rings reduce frictional losses and wear of the surface. This is the first advantage. Second, more number of thin rings have better sealing action than a few thick rings. The thing is that the rings are have a cut or a slot, and that cut section, and when they placed on the piston, generally their open ends are placed opposite to each other. So if number of rings are less in number, then there is a chance that flue gases may come into the crankcase. But if there are more number of rings will be there, then, and if they are placed, their open end is placed opposite to each other, then it reduces the probability of flowing the flue gases from combustion chamber to crankcase. So these are the additional advantages. Then of course, if H is less, then thin rings occupies less portion of land. So in less space, we can place more number of rings. Then more number of thin rings provide better heat transfer from the top to the cylinder. As you know, the piston rings takes the heat from the piston and dissipate or give to the cylinder wall. And if there are more number of thin rings, then the heat transfer rate also increases. Again, in previous slide, yeah, here you can see uh, the piston rings are not in a circular shape. Generally, there is a slot so that it can be expanded and then it can be placed in the grooves provided for the piston rings. So, and whenever we are placing number of rings one over another, then these open slots should be opposite to each other. If they are in the same direction, then the combustion gases easily flow from combustion chamber to the crankcase, or oil may also flow from crankcase to the combustion chamber. So that's why we need to make sure that they, while placing the rings one over another, their open ends should be opposite to each other. Okay, then the gap between the free ends. So here you can see the open end. So what should be the gap between these two ends? So there is no any derived equation for this, and instead of that there is an empirical relation, and that is generally expressed in terms of cylinder bore diameter. And for that we need to understand what is the diameter of this piston ring. So the diameter of the piston ring slightly more than the cylinder bore. And why it is generally more? Because there is a clearance between the piston and the cylinder wall. So that clearance need to be filled by means of this piston ring. So that's why the this diameter is slightly more than the cylinder diameter. And during the assembly the ring is compressed diagonally and passed into the liner. So during assembly that will go inside the grooves and will not create any problem for assembly. And this gap is generally denoted by G, and it is between the free ends of the ring, and is given as follows. It is generally 3.5b to 4b. So if you get the value of b, then we can calculate the h. Also we can calculate the g. Here you can see the g. And this is before assembly, and after assembly you will see 0.002d to 0.004d. This is after assembly. Then width of the top land and ring land. So here you can see the H1, that is the space above the rings. So here the ring, the grooves are provided for the rings, and just above that you will see a height H1. And also between the two rings or between the two grooves there is a ring land, so that is denoted by H2. So we need to find out what should be the value of H1 and H2 generally need to be kept. So first, the distance from the top of the piston to the first ring groove, it is denoted by H and is called as top land, and it is given by H1 is equal to TH, where TH is the thickness of the piston head, or 1.2 times the thickness of the piston head. So if the flat cylinder head is piston head is there, then in that case you may see that the H1 is equal to TH. But if it is a cup shape, then the value may raise or increase up to 1.2 H. Again, the distance between two consecutive ring grooves, that is H2, here you can see the consecutive distance between the ring grooves, it is denoted by H2, here you can see. So it is generally taken between 0.75 H to H. So if you know the H of the rings, then you can find out the distance between the two consecutive ring grooves, that is ring land distance, and it is 0.75 H to H. Then we will move to barrel. So here you can see this is the top land, and it is generally denoted by H1 that we saw in the previous slide, and the portion below the top land is called as piston barrel, and T3 is the thickness on the top surface of the piston barrel, and T4 is the thickness of the barrel at the bottom area. So the piston barrel is the cylindrical portion. Yeah, of course it is a cylindrical portion of the piston. Below the piston head, so exclude H1 and remaining part will be your piston barrel. The thickness of the piston barrel at the top end is given by T3 is equal to, here you can see T3 is equal to 0.03D plus B plus 4.9. This empirical relation we use, and this empirical relation is expressed in terms of bore diameter and B. And B is the radial width of the ring, and T3 is the thickness of the barrel at the top end. Similarly, the thickness of the barrel at the lower or open end is given by, and it is denoted by T4. Here you can see, and it is 0.25 T3 or 0.35 T3. So generally T4 is taken between these two values, where T4 is the thickness of the barrel at the open end. So whenever there is a question related to design of piston barrel, you need to find out dimension T3, that is thickness at the top end, and T4, that is thickness at the open end or lower end. Then next part is skirt. So we discussed piston is generally divided into three segments: top land, ring section, and below the ring section there is a skirt area. So the piston skirt acts as a bearing surface for the side thrust. You know that in the skirt you can see a piston pin is there, and this piston pin connects the piston and the connecting rod, and when connecting rod moves, then the side thrust generated, and the skirt absorbs that side thrust, or it takes that side thrust. The length of the skirt should be such that the bearing pressure due to side thrust, the bearing pressure due to the side thrust is restricted to 0.25 megapascal on the projected area. So while designing this, while calculating the length of the skirt, we need to make sure that the side thrust is restricted to 0.25 megapascal. Again, in case of high engines, so this bearing pressure up to 0.5 megapascal is allowed to reduce the weight of the reciprocating piston. The maximum side thrust will occur during expansion stroke. So during expansion, the maximum side thrust will be there, and considering that value, we need to design the skirt. So what we need to do? We need to equate the forces due to gas on the piston head, which is pi by 4 d square into P max, and this should be equal to the resistance force or equivalent force. And we know that maximum gas pressure is generally in axial direction of the piston, and it is denoted by pi d square upon 4 into P max. And as the piston reciprocates inside the cylinder, so there is a continuous rubbing between the piston surface and the cylinder wall, and that causes the side thrust. So it is calculated as mu multiplied by pi d square 4 upon d square divided by 4 into P max, so where mu is the coefficient of friction, and it is generally taken as 0.1. So by using the value of maximum gas force, we can calculate the side thrust if the coefficient of friction between the piston and the cylinder wall is known to us. Then there is another formula for calculating the side thrust, which is equal to PB into D into LS, where PB is allowable bearing pressure in megapascal, D is diameter of cylinder bore, and LS is length of skirt. So what we need to do, we need to equate these two equations, and once we equate these two equations, you will see the equation, that is mu into pi by 4 d square into P max equal to PB D into LS, and coefficient of friction is 0.1. And if we know cylinder bore diameter, maximum gas pressure, PB and D, then we can calculate the length of skirt in which we were interested. Again, the empirical relationship for the length of skirt is also given. So LS is equal to 0.65 D to 0.8 D. So if you are not in a position to use this particular relation, then you can use empirical formula used for calculating length of skirt. Then the total length of the piston is given by top length plus length of ring section plus length of skirt. If you add these three lengths, you will get total length. So here you can see, here top length plus ring section plus skirt. If you add these three lengths, you will get total length of the piston, or you can say it is the height of the piston, but generally it is called as the length of the piston. Again, there is an empirical relationship for the length of the piston as follows. So L is generally taken between D to 1.5 D, where D is the diameter of the cylinder bore. So generally what is done in the industry, by using the derived equations just like these, the various empirical relations are developed and continuously they are used for designing the piston. Then we will go to piston pin. This is the last component that we will see today. So here you can see in the figure the piston pin, which is placed inside the piston, and especially in that it is between piston boss. So you can see the piston boss and the small end of the connecting rod. So between small end of the connecting rod and piston pin, there is a bush. You can see here, bushing is there. So ultimately what we can see, the piston pin connects the piston and the small end of the connecting rod, and the length of the small end of the connecting rod is denoted by L1. The length of the piston pin is generally denoted by D, and about L2, this is the force, where this is the resisting force, like that we will see afterwards, but the length is L2, where the force, the resisting force acts. Okay, so we will start. The piston pin is also called as gudgeon pin or wrist pin. So these two names you need to remember. As I told, the piston pin connects piston and small end of the connecting rod. It is made of hollow circular cross section. So you can see it is hollow. The inner diameter is denoted by Di, and DOE is outer diameter of the piston pin. And it is often tapered inside, and the smallest diameter is at the center of the pin. So generally at the extreme ends you will see maximum diameter, and at the center you will see least diameter, as it is made as a taper shape. When you look that piston pin physically, you may not in a position to verify whether it is tapered inside or not, but in order to design, we can design in that way. The piston pin is passed through the piston boss. So you can see piston boss is there, and it is passed through the boss provided on the inner side of the piston skirt. The end movement, so there is a chance that the piston pin may move axially and it may come out from two open ends, so that movement must be restricted, and that's why the circlips are used at both the ends. So here you will see one circlip, and at other end another circlip is generally provided. Then there are two types of connections between piston pin and small end of connecting rod. First one is full floating and second one is semi floating. So when piston pin is placed, so it may have a rigid connection with the small end of the connecting rod or piston boss, or the piston is freely rotating inside the piston boss as well as the connecting rod. This is possible, so that depends on the design. So based on that, full floating and semi floating types of connections are there. So when you say a full floating piston pin, then the piston pin is freely rotating inside the small end of the connecting rod as well as in the piston boss. And in case of semi floating, it is free, the piston pin is freely rotating either in the next small end of the connecting rod or the piston boss. So one is fixed and other is rotating. So that type of arrangement you will see, and when it is freely rotating in the piston boss as well as connecting rod, it is called as full floating. And if it is rotating either in piston boss or small end of connecting rod, then it is called as semi floating. Then the question is which material needs to be used for piston pin, and generally plain carbon steel or alloy steel is widely used. It is hardened and ground to reduce wear while turning inside the phosphor bronze bush. So here you can see the phosphor bronze bush. So due to continuous turning, the wear takes place. So generally the surface, outer surface of the piston pin is hardened and ground so that its wear resistance property increases, and ultimately the life of the piston pin increases. Again, how to calculate dimensions of the piston pin? So important dimension is length, which is generally expressed in terms of bore diameter, and inner and outer diameter of the piston pin. So there are two criteria. First, bearing criteria, it is related to side thrust, and second criteria is related to bending. Here in the figure B, you can see the force distribution. This is the uniformly force distribution, and that is due to the connecting rod as it transfers the force from the piston to the crankshaft, and this is the uniformly distributed force. And due to this force, you will see the reaction in the piston boss. And as you know that both end positions there are piston boss, so reaction P by 2 you will see at one end, and remaining half force, that is P by 2, you will see at the other end in order to have a equilibrium condition. And if we consider these forces, it will be a bending force. So we will start with the bearing consideration. Something has happened here. Okay, I guess I did some mistake, or I don't know how that happened. Okay, so Okay, so that's fine. So now the bearing area of the piston pin is approximately divided into piston bosses. So you can see the piston pin here is in contact with the piston boss at two ends, and the middle portion of the piston pin is in contact with the connecting rod. So we need to segregate these two areas, and generally it is assumed that the length of the pin in connecting the rod bush here is 45% of the piston diameter or cylinder bore, and that is L1, and which is 0.45 times the length of the piston pin or diameter. So here you can see L1. So for this length, the piston pin is in contact with the connecting rod. Then the outer diameter of the piston pin D naught, you can see here, is determined by equating the force acting on the piston. So this is the force acting on the piston and the resisting force offered by the piston pin. So the resisting force generally it is offered here. So it is calculated as pi d square upon 4 into P max equal to PB L into D naught into L1, where PBL is bearing pressure at the bushing of the small end of the connecting rod, and DO naught is outer diameter of the piston. So by using this relationship, you can also calculate the L or any unknown value. Again, there are certain important things that needs to be remembered. The bearing pressure at the bushing of the small end of the connecting rod PBL is taken as 25 megapascal. So in the problem it is, if the PBL value is not given, then you need to take 25 megapascal. Then the inner diameter of the piston pin DI is generally expressed in terms of DO, that is outer diameter, and it is generally taken as 0.6 times the outer diameter. So again, this is another empirical relation that we use to calculate the inner diameter of the piston pin. Then mean diameter can also be calculated. The mean diameter of the boss is 1.4 times D naught for grey cast iron piston, and it is taken as 1.5 D naught for aluminium alloy piston. Again, the second design criteria was bending consideration. So for that, see figure B. On figure B, you can see the piston pin is in contact with the connecting rod, and it transfers the power or the force from piston to the crankshaft, and this is the uniformly distributed force P over length L1. So P by L1. And because of the force there are reactions. So on left side you can see P by 2, and also on right side you will see P by 2. These are the resisting forces in order to have equilibrium, and we generally consider them as a point load. And the location of the reactions P by 2 on both sides is generally L by 2. So this is the length, and in order to calculate the bending moment, we will consider a section XX. So either you can start from left end or you can start from right end in order to calculate the bending moment. But here we will start with the left end. So bending moment MB is equal to the force P by 2 into Here you can see the force P by 2 into perpendicular distance from XX, that is from this center. This is L by 2. So P by 2 into L2 by 2. So this is the bending moment due to the force P by 2 minus the uniformly distributed force you can see here, and we need to consider only the left portion from the axis, and that is P by L1 is the force. It is distributed, this P by L is distributed over this particular length only, and this particular length is L1 by 2. So P by L1 into L1 by 2 multiplied by perpendicular distance, because we assume that this is the point load and it is acting on L1 by 4. So this is the 4-point force P1 by L1 into L1 by 2, and the perpendicular distance is L1 by 4. So which is equal to, just simplify the equation, P by 2 as it is, you can see, into L2 by 2 as it is, and in this second segment L1 gets cancelled, so P by 2 into L1 by 4 as it is. So this is the simplified equation, but we can rewrite this L2. When you look at this figure, there is an empirical formula for L2, and it is the mean value of D and L1. So L2 can be expressed as D plus L1 upon 2. So substituting this value in equation number 1, so you can see this L2 in equation 1 is replaced by D plus L1 by 2, and again simplify this equation, you will get MB is equal to PD by 8. So this is the bending moment due to the forces acting on the piston pin. So if you know this bending moment, if you know the value of force P, then you can calculate the diameter, or from any two known values you can calculate the third unknown values. Similarly, for bending moment, you know there are some other equation, moment of inertia, Y and sigma B, and the previous equation you can calculate the maximum bending stress in the piston pin at the central plane, that is on X. You can calculate the bending stress, and once you know the maximum bending stress, you can take that as a permissible bending stress, and for that permissible bending state you can select appropriate material for the piston pin. Again, you need to note down few things. The allowable bending stress for the piston pin should not exceed the following values: sigma B equal to 84 megapascal for case hardened carbon steel, and sigma B equal to 140 megapascal for heat treated alloy. So only few things left. So we will see that the clearance between the cylinder liner and piston is provided to take care of thermal expansion and distortion under load. So that's why the piston clearance is provided. If the clearance is insufficient or very small, piston jamming or seizure occurs. If clearance is too much, then piston slapping takes place and it creates excessive noise. And that's why the optimum piston clearance is maintained, and it varies between 0.375 to 0.1875 mm. So in that range, the piston clearance is maintained. Piston clearance means the clearance between the piston and the cylinder wall. And in case of aluminum, the more clearance, that is twice that of cast iron, is provided as based on its coefficient of thermal expansion. The clearance is less when proper cooling system is provided, resulting in smaller thermal expansion. So again, what type of cooling system you are providing, based on that also you can decide the clearance value. So with this, we will stop here. Okay, so